protect your home safe. Hey, it's Caroline. Can you hear me now? Can you guys hear me? Yes. Awesome. Okay, let's try this again. Let's try this again. All right. Take two. Welcome everybody to the Course of Love Virtual Book Club. This is my second book club that I'm hosting, and I'm really excited to have this one. We're going to have a lot of really great discussions. For those of you, some of you may have read the book already, some of you haven't, or are just going to be joining in for the first time. Yay, the sound's back. You're going to hear the speech repeated over again. Some of you are just going to be catching up for the first time, but I guarantee you, whether you've read the book or you haven't, you're going to get a lot of really great insights. We've got a lot of really special guests on to talk about some of the themes. Depending on where you are in your journey of love, you may have taken different perspectives from the book. Those of you who have been in long-term relationships have probably gleaned, maybe didn't learn a lot or didn't find too many surprises, but probably have found a lot of really great insights into some of the behaviors that look really familiar. And anyone who hasn't, who is at the beginning may have some different perspective in terms of what the road ahead is supposed to look like. So I'm very happy to welcome my guests who are going to be representing various stages of love careers. So, from a person who's single, from a person who is, from the newlywed stage to the long-term married, to the married with children. And as I promised, I'm going to have my husband, Christopher Morrison, join as well. He's going to give a little bit of a male perspective, intermission, answer some of your questions, and it's going to be great. Shan Booty, of course, is going to be joining us towards the end of the program, because we can't talk about love without talking about infidelity. And with everything that's going on right now, we can't talk about infidelity without talking about what's happening with this whole Derek Jackson's drama. So there's so much to get into. I want to get into it right away. For those of you who are just starting, this is how it's going to go. We have about 6 guests throughout the show. It's not just going to be me talking. Each guest is going to get a question, and I'm going to pin that question so that you guys can interact with the guest, ask your question. Let's have a bit of a dialogue around it. And of course, we're going to cycle through all of our guests as we go. And yeah, let's get right into it because we've lost some time. I want to welcome my very first guest. Welcome Olivia to the book club again. For those of you who were in the book club number 1, you'll remember Olivia. Olivia, you're going to sit here and awkwardly listen to my intro on you. I'm so excited to invite Olivia today. Olivia is not only a self-proclaimed, is it romanticist?
Oh, yes.
Romance enthusiast. Olivia reads, is a avid consumer of romance. So I really wanted to have her perspective on this, because not only is she a romance enthusiast, but she's also a psych major, 4th-year university at McGill University. So I'm really excited to have her perspectives on this. So welcome back.
Thank you. I'm so happy to be
Olivia.
here.
I'm so happy you're here all the time. So happy you're here. Oh, and also, of course, you guys, if you want to follow, and I strongly encourage you do, any of the guests, there's that arrow just at the top beside the pink live button. You can drop down, see who's on, and go give a follow. If you want regular book reviews, and when I say regular, I mean absurdly regular book reviews, Olivia's constantly posting them like a book a day. So anyways, Olivia, let's get into this. When you picked up this book, when I asked you to read this book, you mentioned that you got about 10 pages in and you had to stop reading it because you felt very triggered and you felt really attacked. Tell us a little bit more about that.
Yeah, so I got maybe 10 pages in, and every time it would say something like, the romantic thinks this or the romantic thinks that, cross that out and put Olivia, because it was literally talking about me. It was like some kind of weird, it just was like a diary of mine, which is ridiculous. I really identified with, I think we pronounce it Robbie. I'm not too sure how the main character.
I think so. Okay. Robbie, yeah.
Sure. So when he was falling in love with somebody every time he saw them, that was me. That is me, and it's kind of an issue. There's a song by Jose called Someone New, and it's like falling in love with somebody every single time that I see them. And I have this perfect idea of a soulmate, and I have this perfect idea of a partner that I know isn't realistic. And for that just to call me out on that constantly, it was like stabbing me each time I flipped the page. So I literally had to close it, and then I had to go read 2 romantic books, just to kind of get into my own mindset of romantic reality, and then I could start it again. But it was interesting.
Before you continue, who among in the audience is a romantic is like resonating with everything Olivia's saying right now with your romantic ideas? Make sure you come throw up those hearts to show her that she's not alone.
Oh God.
Because this and I almost feel badly for asking you to read this book because I feel like I crushed you a little bit.
Yeah, you had first posted the book and I wasn't going to touch it. I was like, no, I don't want the reality check. And then you said, have you finished it? And I felt called out. So I was like, well, now I have to. So yeah, I wasn't going to pick it up initially, but I got through it and I got better. I kind of got better.
So the book talks about the fact that a marriage doesn't begin with a proposal, or even an initial meeting. It begins way earlier in that. It begins with the idea of when love is born, and more specifically, this dream of a soulmate. And I think you touched on that quite a bit when you talked about the fact that you are a person who has that perfect idea of what finding your love, what finding your soulmate's going to be. So I got to ask you, like, now that, even going into reading this book and maybe even after, do you believe in soulmates?
Okay, so you're gonna see me looking to the side because I had to write down notes for this question. I just had so much that I wanted to make sure that I said. But based on this quote and from my idealization of soulmates, I think that if I were to, go into a marriage right now, divorced in maybe 6 months, like I know that it just wouldn't live up to that reality that I have in this mind where I'm like, you know what, I'm going to be with this perfect person. It's going to go perfectly. That's it. This might sound interesting though, because while I do consider myself a hardcore romantic, when it comes to the idea of soulmates, if people normally refer to soulmates as, two halves of a whole, they're searching for your one true partner to make you happy and whole. I never really subscribed to that version of a soulmate anyways. I think I think that it will leave you fundamentally unhappy and incomplete, because how can you be with somebody if you're always half of a person? I think it's two people coming together to make it work. Now, me saying that fundamentally contradicts all of my actions, every single one of them, which I know is unhealthy and an issue on its own. But I think that there's a part of me that does like the whole romance and the fantasy books and just the romantic reality, and I literally cling to that idea of a soulmate. There was this quote in the book that I did post about, and I just loved it so much. It said, pronouncing a lover perfect can only be a sign that we have failed to understand them. We can claim to have begun to know someone only when they have substantially disappointed us. Geez, okay. And I think that right there has been able to articulate all of my feelings that I hadn't been able to before, because we're going to get a little personal. We're all friends here. We're just going to get a little personal here. But I think with all of my own relationships, and because I have this idea that I really, really want to have this one person, that's it for me. As soon as I start to see them as, flawed, imperfect, as human, really, I automatically take a step back, and I'm like, this is not what I signed up for. You're not this perfect person that I thought you were when I first saw you. And on that same coin though, I flip it around and I say, well, I'm also not that perfect person that you thought I was. And I want to keep that
you're not
distance.
To them.
Exactly. So I know, like, logically that a soulmate may not exist, but I still cling to that, desperate idea of it. And I mean, I'm only 22, so it's not like I'm trying to settle down anyways, and that I need to work on it, of course. But I'm not, getting into a marriage right now, so it's not going to cause me fundamental destruction at this point in my life. But I think when it comes to soulmates, this book really did open up my eyes a little bit more and show me that you have to accept the person for the imperfections, and that it's not one person. And it's, as an aside, even geographically, I just posted this on my story. How can a soulmate really make sense, I guess? Because I some people who have met their soulmate who was their next door neighbor when they were 5. I'm like, of all the billions of people in this world, how did you find your soulmate next to you? Or is it just like, it just makes sense geographically, and in psych you have that, like you're friends with people who you are around constantly. That's why you have certain friends. It's an aspect to it. So I'm saying all this and I sound like I'm contradicting myself, and I guess I am, because I cling to this idea of a soulmate.
It's discovery.
It
right?
is.
Like but your opinion is evolving, especially as you kind of get closer to that belief and you become older, you become more learned. You take yourself out of the romance novels, right?
Yeah.
Which only take you so far into the relationship.
Hmm.
And then, just so, and I think that there are so many people, and I think that's the whole point of this book is that, how society has romanticized love and what the actual reality of it, that love isn't like exciting and throbbing members all the time, right? Like
Unfortunately.
there's this, I've read like 2 romance novels. Well, I assume they all have throbbing
All
members,
of them.
but
Every single
they
one.
all have throbbing members. But that there's this essence of like mundaneness, and there's this essence of just like reoccurring regular life and questions about, is this it? What else is out there? How do I grow? How do we grow? Hey, Atheon. Yeah, like but the romance novels don't take us all the way in, right? They kind of
No.
take us to that point. And when we talk to people, when we talk to couples, it's always like, oh my God, so how did you meet? Because we want to cling to that romance. We want to cling to that idea that it's all the most, like the first 6 months of my relationship was like whirlwind, like Vegas, and can't keep our hands off of one another. And that's the idea that people want to hear. There's some comments coming up here that talk about, having multiples, like they believe in multiple soulmates. What are your thoughts on that?
I like that idea. Again, I don't know if soulmates is the right term. I think that's what I'm getting stuck on. I feel like you can
Mm-hmm.
have multiple partners that can fulfill
Yes.
different needs for you. Like even personally, when I'm looking at whether it be a friendship or a family relationship or romantic relationship, to me, one person cannot fulfill all of my needs. And
Got
to
it.
your point, like when you're looking at marriages and you're like, oh, things just kind of get mundane. I look at that
Yeah.
and I think, I don't want that. I want a different kind of future, I guess, because and it'll be interesting to see what your other guests say, because like when
Yeah.
I look at the marriages that surround me in my everyday life, all I can think about is like, how did you get to that point? Like these
Yeah.
romance novels and your story of how you met are telling me that you guys were at this fireworks stage, that it's
Yes.
just, they are fulfilling every single one of your needs. And then you get to a point when it's a different type of love, and nobody actually talks about that. So this book has been fantastic, and I'm really excited to see what the other people say. But yeah, it's the idea of multiple soulmates. Again, I'm getting hung up on the issue of the word soulmates, because I think it could be
I like
multiple compatible partners.
But I like what Afion said here. It's that it's, not necessarily soulmates, but different people can move your soul in many ways. So
I
I
like
like
that.
that concept. Like that to me feels more comfortable. Like it's not just a 1-to-1 ratio, because different people are going to trigger different things out of you. Olivia,
Mhm.
I'm so glad you came first. Like you're the perfect first guest because we're starting at the beginning. We're starting at the beginning. We're starting with the rosy ideals, and then we're going to get into it. So thank you so much for joining me on today's book club. And again, everyone, if you want to follow Olivia, hit the little arrow thing. You know how to do it. Just tap her.
Thank you. I'm just trying to get out. How do I
Olivia,
get out
thank
of
you
this? I
so
forget.
much. You have to press the X at the corner.
Perfect. Thank you for having me. I'll talk to you soon.
Oh, of course. All right, talk soon. All right, guys. So now we've covered soulmates. So let's get into a little bit of a newlywed situation. I'm going to bring on my next guest. So this is Aubrey. Nice to meet you. Nice to see
Hello.
you. How are you?
Good. How are you?
I'm doing wonderful. So Aubrey, you work in civil construction. You're a civil construction project engineer, which is just the most fascinating, like the most like
No one ever knows what I
incredible.
do.
I know, but it just it sounds really impressive, right? I was like, wow, this girl's got skills. This girl's learned. And you're so I guess you're still considered a newlywed, right? Like I'm trying to do the dates because you got married in October, was
Yep.
it? You got married in October, so not quite a year yet. I'm losing track of the days, but so not quite a year yet. But I think you guys have been living together because you made a move, like across the country to be together from March timeframe. So
Yeah.
you kind of did the whole test run for sure. So thank you so much for joining. I'm really excited to get a newlywed's perspective. So you did read the book, right? I'm gonna put you on the spot
Yeah,
only
I did
because
read
I
it.
know the answer.
Well, I audibled it because I'm a terrible slow reader, but yes, I listen to books as I'm driving to all the job sites.
That's awesome.
So tell us a little bit then about so as you were listening to the book, and you got started to get familiar with the characters. So Ravi and Kirsten are the two characters that we're following in the book, and we're going through all their various stages of their marriage. We're going through all their various stages, not their marriage, but their actual, meetup. And throughout the different stages, we're seeing different sides of the character, and they're really intended to be extremely relatable characters. So I guess the question that I have for you is, did you find Ravi and Kristen to be relatable? And who do you feel like you identified the most with and why?
So, no, unfortunately, I did more with Robbie, which is, cheating. Bad him.
But
Like, I don't.
Olivia said the same thing.
I
Like,
know
she
you
was
don't want to
more
be
on his
compared to
side.
that person, but anyways, so yes, definitely. Actually, one of the things that he says when he's first dating is like that he sees like people as boring, and the reason that she's so interesting is because she's like not as like that. And actually, when I started dating my wife now, I said that like, yeah, she's kind of boring, but like every other person would say, no, it's just like she's healthy. And like,
Yeah.
oh, welcome to like a healthy relationship. This is what
Yeah.
normal people act like. And it's like, oh, okay. So definitely related more to him. And then just to clarify, we've been together for 3 years and then married since October. We moved from Arizona in March. So we basically moved here right when COVID happened. So kind of like segue into the book of like, no matter how long you've been together, early stages or not, like we've been through so much already in the beginning of our relationship of
Right.
being completely isolated with just each other and not knowing anyone
Yes.
else in a new state for 9 months.
Yes. So you kind of
So
expedited the whole, process. Like it's one thing to move in with each other. It's another thing to move in with each other and just have each other.
yeah.
So like what was that like for you?
So when we moved here, she was still in school, and she didn't have a job yet, and I was working 12-hour days. So it was like coming home and like, oh, what are we gonna do? Like, can we go hang out? Like, let's do anything. Like, please talk to me. And I'm like, I'm really tired. Like, I'm done for the day. And it was just like no social contact. I mean, you couldn't go out anywhere. It was just complete lockdown here. So all of our friends were back home, and we actually flew back to the wedding in Florida in October. And so it's like kind of a joke of like, I'm not sure if I'm more excited to marry you or to see all of our friends
Yeah.
and family.
Yeah,
So.
for sure. For sure. So I guess, like what are some of the kind of key experiences in the book that really resonated with you in terms of like experiences that you could even reflect on?
I think the big difference of just like what you were saying earlier, that people don't talk about like the trials and tribulations of marriage. And like this book really goes into depth of like their own trials and tribulations and everything that they've went through as a couple. And my wife and I have like, with COVID and then moving, and we also switched jobs and like trying to decipher like when someone's in a really terrible position in their like work life and you're trying to support them, and like coming home and like you can't bring work home, but you also can't bring home to work. And it's just like a new side of things that you don't really realize really intensifies with COVID and not having anyone else to interact with. We really had to learn to lean on each other. We also drove 35 hours here with a truck and trailer with our 3 animals in the back. So
Yeah.
that was an experience in itself of realizing like, oh, I have to deal with this person for 3 straight days with
Yeah.
animals that are sick, which obviously like they're your little kids. So it's like, won't stop like going to the bathroom everywhere. And we're trying to get hotel rooms when places are locked down, and it's just really crazy.
It's interesting. And someone said in the comments here, I think it was, I want to say Hannibal, Hannibal. I can't read that name. Hannah Bobby. Okay. Saying that the first year of marriage is real. And I think that we have this perception of newlyweds. Like, when you say like, oh, how long you guys been married? And you're like, oh, 7 months. Oh, you guys are babies. You guys are newlyweds. You must still be in that honeymoon phase. But actually, like, look, from my experience or even experience with friends, like that first year of marriage is really tough. And
Mm-hmm.
not a lot of people come out of it. Like, why do you think that is?
I think it was kind of crazy when we first started dating of like the amount of questions that we asked each other that we would ask our friends that have been in long-term relationships. And they're like, wait, you guys are already talking about that? And it's like,
Yeah.
you haven't? Like you guys you're married or you've been in a relationship for like 3 years or 5 years. And so I think that the lack of communication is like a huge thing. Like they just assume like everything's great, but they don't have serious conversations of the future of even like wanting to have children, or if something were to happen to children, where do you want to take them to school? How do you want to raise them? Where do you want to, like, are we willing to travel and move to another state?
Right.
Just out of the wind. And I think that a lot of people, unfortunately, just end up settling. And I think that they just think that things are going to change once they get married and it's going to get better, and it doesn't.
Yeah.
Kind of to go back to what Olivia was saying is like when everything's perfect, like she met somebody and if they're not perfect, like automatically drawn backwards. I actually feel like I did the same thing when I was dating. Like there was like a straight 7 years where if I went on a date, like, no, you're not marriage material. And I just would stop dating and start seeing someone else until I met my wife. So there's still hope.
Yeah. Absolutely. Well, I want to say thank you so much for coming on. I wish you and your wife the best of, I don't think the word is luck. I want to say luck because that's what people say, but I want to say I wish you and your wife the best of skill in terms of this marriage. I think that if we've learned anything throughout the book is that love is not like this isn't luck. It's not necessarily luck. It's a skill that's going to have to continue to evolve. You're going to have to continue to evolve. Your wife is going to continue to evolve and grow, and it's constant learning. So I don't think, good luck really encompasses what is required in order for you to have a long and healthy relationship with your wife. So I'm going to say good learning. How's that?
Sounds great.
And thank you so much for being a part of today's book club. I really love your perspective, and thank you so much for sharing your journey with us.
Thanks for having me.
All right, we'll talk soon. Okay, guys. Now we're gonna do the real challenging part here. Let me just take this away.
I don't know how to kick myself out.
Oh, you just have to press the X in the corner of your screen, I think. There's one at the top corner.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, someone said, what is luck? Yes. All right, let us bring in, I would now like to hopefully bring in Christopher Morrison, who is my husband. Please, 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 please. I can hear you. I can't see you yet.
I know something about it just doesn't want to let us on.
Can you guys hear Chris at least?
I hope you can hear me. At the very least, you may not like what I'm saying, but you can hear me.
Can you guys hear Chris? Yeah. Okay.
Oh,
Perfect.
whoa!
All right, yes, we got him. We got him.
How
We got him. We got him. Yes.
smooth was that?
I want to introduce you guys to Christopher. Christopher is, of course, my husband. Christopher, you and I have been together for, I want to say 13 years. Hey, Alana. Alana says hi.
20,
You have to
30.
make sure you say hi to people, Chris.
Hi, Alana. Oh, hi. What's poppin'? Cheesecake? Girl. Gotta
I
get
really
those
wanted to
cheesecakes.
have Chris on here for your perspective because you are a person who has been, so we've been together for 13 years, so I think that our journey, like the book resonated in a sense where, we kind of have that, I'll call it a typical, if I could call it that, or a typical marriage where, we meet, there's some courting, there's an engagement, there's a pregnancy, and then there's a baby, and then there's a wedding, and then there's another pregnancy, 2 kids, married for 10
Yep.
for 11 or 10 years.
Check.
So
Check.
I really wanted to get your
Check.
perspective on this. Yes. So I
Yeah.
asked you guys to come up with some questions that you wanted to ask Chris, because Chris is our only male guest. So we really want to ensure that we got the male
Pleasure.
perspective. Thank you so much, Jade Alexandra. Someone said we're pretty.
Thank you.
We're a pretty couple.
Thank you. Appreciate
I
that.
see how you got all smoldering when he was like accepting a compliment. Like, thank you.
I can't help it. I can't.
Stop,
I
please.
can't. Back to
Okay,
the
so
topic at hand, please.
back to the topic at hand. Let's ask you some questions. So one of the questions that came up, and I thought was a really good question, especially for, a marriage like ours, because we are both very ambitious people. We are both, I'm also younger than you, so I do have a different journey than you have. I didn't say by how much. You proud of me? Don't raise your eyebrows. I'm getting in trouble for that one.
I'm just taking notes right now. Right after this, we'll talk. Keep
We'll
going.
talk. I didn't say by how much. Okay. Actually, that's a good question right there. So the question we have here is, how do you stay together while evolving individually?
Whew, that's a it really does kind of depend. There's what how we do it may not be exactly how it applies to other people. So I'm always cautious about giving out these sort of ideal statements of how it is. How we've been
No,
able to
just
do
tell
it.
to how about from
Yeah,
your experience for
yeah.
you.
How we've been able to do it. We've been able to. I think both of us sort of have that individual drive, and being able to continue our own pursuits. I think we've allowed ourselves the space, allowed each other the space to sort of take up new things, new ideas, new ventures. Like, if you look at the This Is Lauren persona, we look at your executive coaching, all the things that you are looking to branch out into, supporting that. Being able to evolve in the marriage also needs to consider what each individual needs to be themselves and flourish in that environment. And that's what I think we do well. Now, that's not without its arguments, right? I mean, how much time do you spend doing that? There was a time early on in our marriage where I was spending too much time working. Like I have, I had a drive, I had a family to care for. I wanted nothing more than to do that. But I lost sight of the very thing I was trying to work for while trying to attain greater and greater heights. And so, you got to check yourself, and you have to have your partner check you, and then you have to be able to listen. And I think it's in that listening that many times it falls down. You start to close your ears to what your partner may be saying, and maybe close your heart. So we've been able to navigate that. Again, not perfect. We have our shouting matches. We have those days where we're just not seeing eye to eye. But I am stubborn. I'm very stubborn, and I'll let Lauren speak about her own faults, but I'll speak to my own. I'm
I don't
I'm
have those.
stubborn. Yeah, and I'm stubborn, and in an argument, backing down. I mean, I negotiate for a living, and backing down is not really what I want to do. But then I also don't want it to get to the point of sort of too emotional where I know things are not going to be resolved. So I often walk that line between understanding when to take a pause and when not, and to varying degrees of efficacy, right? I mean, Lauren could tell you, about the many times I've been wrong in the way I did it. And at the end of the day, right or wrong, it's a matter of perception, but it's what the other person needs to feel valued, and how you navigate that really is a matter of understanding your partner, spending time listening, and then even in those hard moments, coming back to those first principles.
Yeah. I'm glad you shared that. I'm glad
Mm-hmm.
you throw up the hearts because you shared things today that maybe
Oh,
I've heard for the first time.
it's coming out today. You just keep the questions coming. I've been drinking some of this wine. It's been going well. Let's
Okay,
do it.
let's see. I'll give you another question.
Sure.
When dating someone who has been hurt, and I'm only asking you this question because you invited me to ask you whatever was being asked here. When dating someone who has been hurt from a failed engagement, how does one love them through it and maintain their expectations of a relationship progressive without invalidating? So, I think that, to kind of put it a different way, I think the reason I picked that question is because that was kind of the beginning of our story, in terms of you were coming out of a situation. So what kind of support were you looking for from me?
Well, let's give a bit of the backstory there, right? Because I was married once before, as Lauren said, and it was a very short-lived marriage. I ended the marriage, so I may have been hurting, but my male ego wouldn't allow me to admit that I was hurt.
Yeah.
But I knew very much after the fact that, after meeting you, that I was hurting. I knew that, some of the reasons that marriage failed, poor communication, but also not even listening and asking the right questions before going into it. So, we can touch on that point after, but, what I needed from you, I got from you very early on. You gave me that opportunity to pour the romantic side of me at you, and you were taken aback by it. And that fed me even more, right? You remember those early days, eating that St. Hubert's chicken and hotels and going all over the place. Let's go here, let's go there. I was a big, I like the big gestures. Let's go to Vegas. Let's take a trip. Let's have fun together. And early on, we got to experience the fun that both of us needed. And I think, going on roller coasters, all of that stuff, just, it reawakened me. I was closed, and this is how I knew I was hurting. I was closed before you. I was closed off to that experience. Like, you did some things you did some subtle things early on to just light that fire back in me, and it just, I took off. I awakened and, rediscovered myself, right? And it's fantastic. I smile every time I think about how you and I got started and all the fun things we did and all the ways that I freaked you out. It was fantastic.
Yeah. You're a bit enough.
Yeah. For those of you who aren't Caribbean, nuff means I'm a lot.
Enough.
Mm-hmm.
No, but I think that's really cool. And I like that you showed both sides, because, there's definitely, and maybe I should have reversed the questions, but the question got asked earlier, but there was definitely that spark of romance, that spark of something new, that spark of, especially coming out of of different relationships, that spark of newness, that spark of like reinvigoration and energy and romance. But then after a while, it starts to get into that zone where it's like, hey, this isn't what, like, to what Olivia was talking about before, where we've had so many of those, this isn't what I signed up for moments.
Yeah.
So I think that's incredible, that, you've been able to share both sides. And based on the comments here, Chris, I'm sorry to say, but people want more of this.
Okay.
So
Inside joke.
People want more of these. Like, I could go on and on with all these questions. So we're gonna have to, you and I are gonna have to bring this back, and we're gonna have to, like, one-on-one and really talk about our journey, because we can't get through it all in the 8 minutes that we have.
Oh, I love someone popped something up. Hold on, because there's one thing I wanted to get in. Like, someone asked the question. You mentioned that you hadn't asked all the right things prior to your first. This question brings about so much emotion for me, because it's not only me, but those that also are embarking on their relationship journeys. As men, we don't ask the right questions. We get caught up in the, if your girl's got that something and she makes you, each guy, your girl's got that thing lights us up, and we just forget everything else, right? Men are physical creatures. We're visual, and many times it comes from biology. And once the biology sort of calms down, you're like, hey, wait a minute. I married. Oh, you. Oh, this is who you are. Well, I would have asked so many more questions about what you want, what you like. And, you skim over this stuff while dating, but, how do you parent? Sometimes people haven't even thought about that. When I think about high school sweethearts and people who've been, they've just learned to adapt quickly, and they meld to each other. But did you really ask all the questions? Did you know that you wanted to grow? And even if you don't have all the same or quote unquote right answer that your partner wants to see, you still have to ask the question. So you're going in eyes wide open. And I didn't go in eyes wide open. I didn't know what her triggers were. I didn't know that she would parent a completely different way from what I saw as acceptable, both culturally and just respectfully. There was just so much I didn't know about the expectations of family. So I would, I would double down on asking more questions. And as guys, especially, I implore you, before you get caught up, and just ask some more questions, sober and
Who
clothed.
might do, who might do. A question I would have asked?
What?
What temperature do you set the thermostat at? That's what I would have asked.
That's
a real fight.
That's a real fight. That is a real fight.
It's a real fight.
Fortunately, I have it electronic and password protected, so
Yeah. Are you a psycho who has to password protect everything in the house?
Did you just call me a psycho? Oh, no, hold on, folks. It's about to get real up in this joint. You just call me a psycho?
No. In theory.
In theory.
One who does do that is that the kind
Here's
of person you are. You know what we might do, Chris? We might actually bring you back on at the end for those who want to stick around, and we want to have some questions.
Fun. Yeah, I'm having too much fun. Let's just do this. Okay. I'm getting out of here. Okay, you kicked me out. I got the hook, guys. Cool. Talk to you later. Bye.
All right. Thank you so much for joining. Thank you guys so much for taking part in the question. All right. So Chris Morrison has left. All right. I am going to be bringing on my next guest. All right. So we've been talking a lot about, for those of you who are just joining in, we're talking about the course of love. We're talking about the various stages and journeys through love, which is why I'm so excited to bring Anik onto my virtual book club. Anik is a relationship strategist and the owner of Key Details and Key Relationships as well. Anik, I'm so excited. You're a certified coach. You're a certified relationship coach. You're a wedding officiant. You're a wedding planner. And I think you talked a little bit about the fact that you started your journey as a relationship strategist because you were so involved in the beginning stages of people's weddings or people's marriages that you were quickly starting to see that they were more focused on the day than they were on the entire journey ahead of them. So first of all, thank you so much, Anik, for joining.
Glad to be here. So excited.
Yes.
Chris set the best table ever. I was like, yes, Chris, you're saying the right thing. So it's amazing.
Yes, exactly. So the question that I have for you, because and I think Chris did set it up really nicely for us because, he talked about his, currently successful marriage, because we're still in it, guys. We're still here. So I'm going to call it successful. He talked about a failed relationship that he had before. One of the concepts of the book is that it's sticking around, that it's not necessarily about the meetup. It's not about the first meet, the proposal, the wedding, what kind of flowers you got, what your dress looked like. The sticking around, it's the weird exotic achievement is what he says. And it's we are being continuously fed with this narrative, like you got to stick it out. Marriage is work. You got to do the work. You got to stick it out. So I think the question that I have for you is, other than for dire reasons, is there ever a right time to divorce?
So that's a very, very tricky question, and it's very situational. And I think I'll dial it all the way back to the beginning. As Chris rightfully said, in the beginning, we all need to have those uncomfortable questions and conversations with our partner to make sure that we're on the right page, right? And I think if we do that, then if we get to a point where it's a little bit tricky, as I like to call it, it will be a lot easier to kind of have a clearer perspective. So to answer your question, there's no clear cut, here are the 5 red flags, now run. So it's never going to be like that. But however, you have to kind of get to understand your partner, what their belief systems are, is huge, what their expectations are, which is huge, and really get to understand what their expectation is of the whole union altogether. And then if you have that, seek out a coach or a counselor where you can come together and create your now holistic belief system together. All right, we're married. This is what we're going to do. And then if things start falling off, at least you have that foundation, something, a platform, an agreed upon platform of where you want it to go. And then you'll have an idea of what to do from there.
Thank you. That's awesome. There was this part in the book actually where the couple, they actually go and they seek like a marriage consultant or a marriage therapist, and then they talk about this moment afterwards where they go to dinner with one another, and suddenly the husband realizes that there are like, he starts to look at his wife in a different way, in that he starts to look at her in a way that says, I don't really know everything there is to know about you, like there are things that are still to be discovered, and there are things that are still to be explored about you. And it kind of, all of a sudden, this sweatpants robe wearing, doesn't put on makeup, spit up all over her cloth woman, or all over her robe woman, is actually becomes beautiful again. How do you help how do you help people in long-term relationships continuously rediscover one another?
Beautiful question. And it's always looking at, do I want to get to know my partner? Do I
Yes.
want to keep re-exploring? Because just as we change, you know how the seasons change, the leaves fall out off the tree, etc. Our relationship keeps going. It's not going to be stagnant or staying still. So you have to intentionally want to get to know your partner at every stage and not be like, okay, I don't know who you are, I'm going to run. Versus,
Yes.
okay, I'm learning a new part of you. Something about you is evolving. And you can go along with the ride and evolve as well, or stay there and stuck with that person that you met in 1998. For example, my husband, I've been married for 18 years.
Yeah.
I'm not the same person. I was 120 and, all right. And I won't tell you my weight now.
I was gonna say, I'm like, just share your weight.
I won't tell you, but I'm definitely not that person. I don't have the same education. I don't have the same outlook. I used to like doing certain things. Now I don't want to do those things anymore. And
Yeah.
so if you want to stick it in for the long haul, you have to intentionally see those changes and want to get to know your partner in those changes. Now, I'm not talking about those that came around and gave you the false advertising, I like to call it. Those that brought
Okay.
their best representative and held out for about a year or two, and then you're like, who is this? Totally different situation.
That's not, is that, so how do you know the difference between someone who's grown and someone who was just hiding from you this entire time?
Beautiful question. I like to liken it like this. When you think about a seed, right? If a seed is kind of under the ground, it may look like it's dead, like nothing is
Yeah.
happening. But eventually, once watered and nourished, eventually you start to see a plant coming out, right? So sometimes people are in the burying season. And so if we begin to show love and water them with the affection and stuff that they need, we should be able to see the fruits. We should be able to see the vine coming out.
Yeah.
But if you're doing your best and you're not seeing that happen, then they may just be buried. They're in a coffin at that
Okay.
point. And at that
Yeah.
point, then definitely seek supports to see what's happened. Are they buried and dead, or are they buried in kind of in that incubation period to blossom into this beautiful thing?
Wow, that was brilliant. That was awesome. Oh, I love the answer to that question. Anik, before I let you go, I really want to, because everyone in here is obviously curious about relationships and curious about love. I would really love it if you just kind of gave the people a sense of what it is that you do, and how people can even get in touch with you aside from obviously following, but what, like, just give a sense of like what it is that you do, and how you engage with your clients.
Well, I do before I do, so that's premarital counseling, or just you want to go out there and start dating. We talk, we counsel, and we with individuals and with couples just to make sure that they are aligned, right?
Yeah.
Either aligned with yourself or aligned with your partner to be. Then I also do the I do, which is I can marry you if you like. I'm your wedding officiant. I can plan your wedding if you like. And then I do the after I do, which is to me the biggest thing. Once
Yes.
you've decided that this is your forever person, the work doesn't end after I do. The work
Yes.
starts after I do. That's
Yes.
when you realize, actually, you start to realize who you are. You might have known, you might not have known that the toilet seat up was a big deal until you
Yeah.
got married.
Yes.
Or the socks on the floor was a big deal. And then you start to have to ask yourself, why do I care? So the work starts after. So I do a lot of my work, the bulk of my work is after I do, for sure.
I was going to say that too about, what Chris's comments on, there were so many questions that he would have asked beforehand. But even if you had asked me that's beforehand, I don't necessarily know how I feel about it until such time that you start leaving your socks on the floor continuously. So don't ask me. I don't know. I don't know that, I might tell you in the moment, like, well, it's fine. Everything, we all make mistakes. I've got my sloppy habits. You've got your sloppy habits. But when it's happening day after day, I might feel differently about it. Similarly, my parenting, I can have theories about the kind of parent that I want to be, and then the child comes and they just don't stop crying.
Exactly.
And I could have different ideas, right? So
So
I
true.
think that it's obviously it's great to ask questions, but to your point, Anik, the learning doesn't stop. Like you don't
Never.
figure someone out before you marry them. Like it's in the learnings in the after, the learnings in the after the I do. So anyways, I just want to say thank you so much
Thank
for joining
you.
us today. And I encourage everyone, go follow Key Relationships. And I know you continuously do lives. I know you continuously do different events and seminars. So, and obviously offer your services as well. So thank you so much.
Thank you. I can't wait to have you and Chris. After that conversation, I'm like, Lauren and Chris, you got to come.
You know what? We do, because I've learned some things.
All right. We'll
Thank
be
you,
in touch.
Anik. You will
All
be in
right. Take
touch.
care. Bye.
All
Thank
right,
you,
guys.
everyone.
Thank you. Thank you. All right, guys. All right. So I know that we're a tad bit behind schedule, but that's because I had some odd technical difficulties in the beginning, but hopefully you guys are still down for this conversation. A lot of really interesting stuff. And I'm about to bring on my next guest. My next guest is Elle. Hey, what's up?
What's going on?
I'm like killing it with the intro today. Like I just say like my next guest and then boom, up. Like it's like I got someone queuing things in the studio for me. But Elle, thank you so much for joining. Elle
Thank you for
is
having me.
Oh my gosh, I'm so happy to have you. You always have me at your events. I'm so happy to like have something of my own and
I
be
know,
like,
finally
can you come?
earned the favor, right?
Yes. So Elle, you are a global retail leasing executive. So, you got the power. See that for sure. You are also the founder of Pretty Girls Work, which provides a platform for women to achieve, and their visions in terms of business and financial success, but embracing their femininity. I
Yeah.
like the idea that the Pretty Girls Work, so really, not feeling the need to suppress those things that make us feminine, but actually use those as our superpowers. So thank you so much for joining, and I'm really excited to get your perspective on the
Thank
book.
you.
And I know that you listened as much as you could to the book, but hopefully you can still answer the question.
Yes.
And yes, sincerely, this live is going longer than an hour, so strap in, okay? um, so Al, as we were kind of going through the book, and even if you only got like, however far into you got, like there were still a lot of different behaviors that you would have detected throughout the book. So just from your perspective, like what are some of the immature behaviors that you saw between Robbie and Kirsten that really were kind of triggering for you or really stood out with you?
I think something that resonated with me, and I think that it probably resonates in a lot of people's relationships, it's just not really leaving room. For me, a mature relationship is vulnerability. And when you don't have
Yes.
access to that, it leaves a gap in between because no one's coming into a relationship perfect. So I'm an imperfect person. Whoever I'm with is an imperfect person, and we're all coming with our own baggage and our own ideals and different issues that we're working through. And vulnerability is really what bridges the gap between those two people. So I think that that's probably, and to your point, I need to figure out whether or not that gap is bridged, because you kind of go through ebbs and flows in your relationship, right? So you don't necessarily notice that gap when you're infatuated with someone, and then you're like so in love and it's so romantic and you're in the honeymoon stage and everything is wonderful. But when love turns into more of an action word than a feeling, then you
Oh, wow.
need to start arming yourself with the tools that it's going to take to make it through those moments, because it might be small moments and it might be large moments, but if you don't have the access to those resources and those tools, and you're not willing to make yourself vulnerable to be able to bridge the gap between yourself and your partner, I think that's when you really run into some dilemmas. And I know that that certainly resonated for me in my relationship as well.
One of the things that one of the, I guess, immature behaviors that really stuck out with me was the sulking. So there was this breakdown of sulking. So when you know, you ask your, you have this all the time. I think everyone relates to this, where it's like, hey, is something wrong? Or for anyone who watched like Malcolm and Marie, it was like that moment where
Yes.
you're like, something going on? Yeah, no, nothing. Everything's fine. Everything's fine.
But
It's
see, I'm
like,
different with that. So for me, my immature, and I'll own my immature
yes,
actions in my relationship. When I say everything's fine, I almost never say it in a way that is intended to make the person realize that I'm not fine. Like, it's not a passive aggressive thing with me. And my phrase is no worries. Like, everything is no worries. Everything is fine, because it's almost like I need everything to be perfect until it's not. And until I
yes.
take the fact that it's not anymore. And so I think for me, my immaturity in my relationships historically has been trying to convince myself that I'm okay with things that I'm not okay with.
Yes, yes. I will do that too, where I will be quiet about it only because I'm really trying to figure out, am I okay with this? And if I'm not okay with this, why am I not okay with it?
Mm-hmm.
But in that process, I'm going to look like I have an attitude, right? Like in that process, it's going to be like, what is your problem?
But
And it's like, I'm just
I almost feel like
sorting
that's
through things.
healthier, because at least you know something's wrong. With me, I feel like everything is fine and everything
Yeah,
kind of put on the back burner. So then when my attitude comes out to the other person, it really feels like it came out of nowhere. Whereas for me, I have the longest fuse of anyone I've ever met in my life. So
yes,
for me, it could have been going on for the last month. And
yes,
it just manifested itself today, and it doesn't make sense to the other person because there was no trajectory, there was no ramp up to what it is that they're seeing. So I almost feel like the way that you deal with things and the way that most people deal with things is a little bit healthier, because at least you know there's an issue that needs to be addressed.
it's Chris. Are you still listening? Throw up a heart if you're still listening, but I figured it out. I'm doing it the healthy way, Chris. Okay. Um, but I love the idea. I loved how he broke down the concept of sulking. It's like you're sulking, like, because if someone at work were to be like, "Hey, Al, what's going on?" You'd be like, "Well, you know, there was this thing that happened in the meeting." Like, you'd be very forthcoming with it. But there was this. But he talked about this sense of like, you know, when you're in a relationship, you're giving the person like you're trusting the person with your whole self. You're trusting them with their whole heart. So this whole sense of like, I'm not a mind reader. Well, like, God damn it, that's what you're supposed to be, because I've given you everything. So, and he equated it to like a baby or an infant, you know, it's like an infant doesn't necessarily have to vocalize to you what's going on, but you are so, they're relying on you 100% to figure it out. And so when we get into those moments where we become vulnerable or when we become upset around the people who we love and who we've entrusted our lives and hearts to, we kind of revert back to that, where it's like, I'm looking for you to care enough to figure it out the way that you would if I were an infant who couldn't speak. And I thought that that was
Yeah,
like, oh, I wonder if
it's
that's
true.
why.
It's true.
Yeah.
And I think that another aspect of it, like we're talking about it in terms of sulking because something wrong has happened, I think it can actually be expanded into all sorts of different parts of your relationship, because there are things that are not going to come organically to your partner, even though you feel like they should.
Hmm.
So as your partner may not be romantic in the stereotypical sense, but
Yes.
if your partner recognizes that that is something that is valuable to you, and your partner is intentional about trying to create that for you, doesn't matter that they're not good at it, doesn't matter that you needed to tell them to do it or that you need to remind them to do it. Isn't it enough that they care enough to be intentional about loving you the way that you need to receive love? So it
Yes.
doesn't even necessarily need to be a negative situation that happens where, oh, you know, I'm not a mind reader, how was I supposed to know something was wrong? Sometimes it's just about day-to-day things that we need. And I know we talk about love languages all the time, and just being able to communicate to them how it is that you need to receive love and how you need to feel that from them, because they're not mind readers and we're not infants. So just needing to tell them that doesn't disqualify the fact that they love you or that they care about you or that they want to give you the world. You just need to give them some instructions to follow to how to do that specifically for you.
Yeah, absolutely. And I I think that it is accurate to like check yourself, when you are putting unrealistic expectations on your partner,
Mhm.
and how much more productive it would be if you almost treated them like a coworker. Like take yourself out of that mode to treat them like a coworker that says, when this happened, this is how it felt, and have that honest dialogue.
And you're in
Um,
project management, so it's all about over communication.
it is
So you
about
can't
over.
get mad, yeah, you can't get mad at someone for not doing something that you never communicated to them that you needed. So after that
Yeah.
communication happens, if there's a gap in their actions or in their attitudes, then you can analyze what that means for your relationship, whether that's something you're willing to accept, whether it's something that they have the capacity for. All of that analysis comes after, but it can't really come until you communicate what it is that you needed in the moment, or what it is that you need in your relationship.
I will say that Chris's favorite trait about me and my project management self is my over communication. He frequently says, "Lauren, you don't say things enough. You, like."
I'm quiet. I'm
No.
quiet. So that's something that I'm definitely learning to work on, is being able to communicate what I need, because I think there's also a certain aspect of us that especially if you're independent, and I know that like when you're very independent, when you're high performance, when you coming from that type of career, there's a certain element of, well, if he doesn't do it, I'll just do it myself. I can do it myself. That's not the point.
Yes.
So and I see that in myself. I catch myself with that more often than I'd like to admit. And
Yeah.
instead of communicating what I need to the person, I just kind of fill that role for myself, and then I just secretly get resentful over the next month until it blows up about something, about, I don't know, a dish being in the sink or something trivial.
Yes,
But
exactly.
yeah, it's just, I think it
Exactly.
really just comes down to the communication of it.
Awesome. Well, Elle, thank you so much for joining. Everyone, make sure you go check out Elle. Follow her by hitting that button by the little pink box that says live, and dropping down. Follow what she's doing with Pretty Girls Work. You're always running such amazing initiatives, such
Thank
incredible
you.
seminars. You're so empowering. You're so inspiring.
As are
So
you.
I'm just so happy to have had you on this. So thank you so much for joining, and
Thank
for your
you, Lauren.
amazing perspective. Like you killed it. You
Thank
killed
you,
it.
Lauren.
All right.
Bye.
Bye. I'm not letting Chris back in this room. There will be no bonus content, guys. It's not gonna happen. I can't. I've made my bed too much. Anyways, I would now like to turn us to our final guest. Where is she? All right, I'm gonna introduce us to our final guest. Um, I don't even know that I really need to introduce her. Ryu!
Back, but still seen.
Hey, what's going on? Thank you. It's Shay.
I just want to let you
It's Shared Booty, everyone.
know everybody's excited for an appearance of mine. He's literally
Hey.
our time. When's our time? He's up.
He's what? He's what?
Holding the phone, being like, when's our time? When are we live? When are we next?
Inst Monica,
Okay.
your fan.
Okay. It's not your time, Chris.
Jared's there.
It's not his time
What up?
either.
What's going on?
Yes.
This isn't a family FaceTime, guys.
All right.
Anyway, oh, now Zara's coming. Everyone's here.
I'm actually going to holler at you today. I felt like we needed
Yeah.
Stay quick, you're coming.
grab an orange.
Shan, where's your AirPods?
Oh, there might be one right here, actually. Want to just extra out the conversation, I understand.
No, not because we want to extra another conversation, because you keep coming in and out. Anyways, I just want to say that this is actually like so exciting for me, because one of my I always say to Shan, like, I listen to different people's podcasts, and I always get like so jealous when people do podcasts with their siblings, because they just seem like they're having like the most fun, and they're having like the most inside jokes that no one gets. And I'm like, I want to laugh about Sega Genesis, people who know what the deal is. So I'm really excited that you're here with me, and Ryu's here, and I don't know where Jared went. But let's talk about infidelity. Let's talk about the thing that people know about in marriage, but don't necessarily talk about in marriage.
You know what I think we should start as this, not to hijack your thing, but I thought
Yeah,
the
go
most
ahead.
interesting debate point from The Course of Love, for those of you who read the book, is he never ended up telling his wife that he cheated. So he
Yes.
had this affair and he fell in love with somebody else. And the advice of Elaine de Botton was that like you just don't need to say that. So I'm curious to know what people's opinions are on that. Just as a thought starter.
Okay.
What's yours?
No,
Darren?
I got it. My thought. One second, I'm just writing that down. Yeah, I don't want to know personally. It depends on the kind, you know what I mean? Like if it's a life-changing cheating, if it's a life-changing cheating, like, you know, or if it's going on a long period of time, I kind of then I think that there's definitely the obligation. But I don't know that I necessarily want to know about the one-time slip-ups or that conversation that went too long or whatever the case is. I don't know. I don't know how I feel about knowing about those things that are. I don't know how I feel about understanding something that was temporary that could potentially change the course of our relationship. I don't know how I feel.
You know
Let's
what's
see how people feel.
Everyone's just like, Jared said, tell her. And everyone's like, you've got to say it. And
yeah,
it's fascinating because it is, with anything in your relationship that is going to change the trajectory of your connection, you're going to want to be the co-pilot on that and be there to give insight and to give another perspective. But when it comes to cheating, like we create so many barbed wire fences that our partner can't come to us, and then we end up not being able to counsel them on possibly one of the most monumental things in our relationship, which can be a game changer for a lot. So I disagree. I think that you should tell.
I know, but I think that that's so interesting. And that's what was like really cool about the book is that the book challenged everything that we believe about relationships, but it made so much damn sense. Do you know what I mean? Like, yeah, of course you would like, of course my partner is my best friend. If they were entertaining another job opportunity, why wouldn't they come talk to me? If they were entertaining any decision in their life, I'm the first person that they should come talk to. So why do we have to choose to make it to, why are we living in this world where we just believe that this part of them that could be attracted to somebody else no longer exists? It's irrational. Like it's completely irrational. And that was the push and pull of the narrative, like all along for me. Like I think a lot of people feel this way where, you know, what's being said, like what you're saying makes 100% sense. But we've been wired so differently all along in terms of our ideals about what a monogamous relationship is that it's difficult to do that rewiring. Or I wouldn't say it's difficult. I would say that it's work to do that rewiring.
It's definite work. And it's fascinating because when you read the book, I feel like the first point of disconnect, which allowed for this to happen, which I'm a very big fan of Esther Perel, and she has an entire book that's called State of Affairs that's all about affairs. And the interesting thing about talking about cheating ever is that unanimously across the globe, people agree it's a terrible thing. If we debated the death sentence, we'd have a bunch of yes and no's in here. If we debated a number of other, gun control, there'll be a bunch of yes and no's in here. But almost universally, people agree that cheating is bad. So when you're trying to have honest conversations about it, it's almost really tough because everyone's like, well, if you're a cheater, you're evil, you're the bad one. What's the discussion? Like there's nothing else to say about it. And then we end up not actually getting to the nuances that lead to healing. So I'm a very big fan of like picking apart. And what's great about talking about a book is we're not blaming anybody who's in it. But what was an interesting pivotal point to me in the book is, remember where they used to describe their sexual fantasies to each other?
Yes.
And so they would always, that was a part of like their kink play, or their foreplay. They would just like make up a fake story that was like, essentially bringing in some excitement and novelty in the bedroom without having to go anywhere. And one of the scenarios the husband brought up, he was describing a threesome, and the wife was like, I think you're talking about the waitress at the diner. Like, this isn't fantasy. Like, that's someone that we know. And he was like, oh, no, I wasn't. Like, he got really uncomfortable, and then she shut down. And then from that point on, they never did the fantasy thing ever again.
And that's the crazy thing, because it doesn't make sense. Like with all the other things in our lives, with all the other facets, we wouldn't treat anything else in our lives the way that we treat love. And that's the most irrational thing about that. And that's what the book revealed is like everything, like that's what makes it so irrational, how we feel about it. And this narrative that we've just inherited, there's another way to say that without rhyming, right?
Yeah.
This narrative that we've consumed that where we don't even question why we feel that way. We just know that you're supposed to feel that way.
Yes. But I feel like that was a big disconnect because from that point on, he looked at her like, I can't trust you with my authentic feelings about being desirable or desiring other people. And they both did that to each other because she also had that connection with that person at her job that didn't go quite as far as his affair did, but nonetheless, they both closed each other off as possible co-pilots in an area, again, that could steer the direction of their relationship. So I'm a really big fan of be curious about your partner's humanities and experiences and keep that like across the board. Don't make this the one area that they can't come to you because you don't know who they might go to. They might go to the friend who's always wanted to sabotage your relationship because they're single and they wanted you to be single. They might go to the friend who has terrible morals and values from a negative upbringing and doesn't know the goals of your relationship. So you're like allowing another party to be there to give advice, again, in a way that could really impact your relationship. So I think that a foundational, I mean, mind you, some people are going to cheat regardless. That's not to say that you're going to be able to prevent that. If somebody lacks discipline and lacks moral character, there's not a ton you can do. But I do believe in that book in particular, the cheating or like the seeds of cheating began when she like really put a hard line there and said, if you ever have fantasies or thoughts about other people, I don't want to hear them because it hurts me.
So I think that's something that we've talked about before, in a sense where it's like if you make external relationships forbidden, they become that much more appealing or that much more attractive. So how do you kind of, but if you openly talk about them and if you make them acceptable conversations, then they're maybe not as desirable, or they're maybe not as like that red button that says the red button that says don't push the button, and you're like, I kind of got to know what that button does if I push it, right?
Can I call you out on something? Because we had an argument about this at Christmas once. You remember?
Yeah, no, that's what I'm referring to.
Oh, well, you didn't say it explicitly, so.
Okay, I said okay, go ahead, call me out.
Okay, well, the Christmas argument we had was because you watched a movie where essentially a guy went with a happy family to a diner. He became fixated on the waitress, and him and the waitress started an affair. And more or less, and I talked about the Derek Jackson situation to give a nod to this today. But essentially what happened is he's like, oh, I'm not a cheater. I could never cheat. And my wife would probably be upset if I had a connection with this waitress, but I'm not going to cheat. So no stress. I'll just see her one more time. And so he starts walking down. He starts walking down.
Start jiggling.
He starts walking down the path of a cheater, but because he doesn't identify with that and knows he could never do that, he doesn't realize until it's too late this is exactly who he is. But you watched that movie and you were talking about it so loudly that Chris could hear and being like, I would never want to know, if you found someone else attracted to my business, and that would end everything. I would be livid. It would break me if I ever found out. And then I was like, hold on, let me get a cork. Or I just got to walk around. But I was saying to you, I was like, how are you setting yourself up for like transparency and success and authenticity in your relationship when like you're comfortable saying things like that? So I'm just curious if like your stance has changed on that.
No, but that's my point though. That's my point, in a sense where there is that push and pull, right? Where it's like, it's the narrative that says, I don't want to know because you're not supposed to be. And then, but you know what it is that Chris and I haven't normalized that conversation in our relationship, right? If we normalized it, it would be a different story, but someone's got to be the first to go, right? And I think that comes with kind of anything where it's like, it makes sense to I just want to say this isn't annoying at all. That's what I want to say.
You know what? Actually, I want to make a parallel when you're finished with your point.
Go ahead. While she's quiet, and you can speak.
No, you finish your point.
I don't remember my point now. Your baby distracted me.
Okay, here's the point I wanted to make that I thought about today. That is, when a comedian does takes at a club that's like, hey, this could not go well. That's what's going to happen right now. This could not go well. But we can all agree that cheating is bad, right? So cheating is bad across the board. And as a result of that, people have a hard time being honest and thus asking for help, when they realize that, like, hey, I'm possibly putting myself down a line that I don't know how to come back from.
Right.
We all agree that shaking babies is bad, right? Can't shake a baby.
Yes. But as you do squats.
You know, getting frustrated at your newborn baby, like, is not a good thing to do. However,
Yeah.
babies are very annoying, and it is difficult at times when they're really irrational, which is today, for example, I was wearing a bonnet, and I was explaining to people I'm wearing the bonnet because she pulls my hair. And so sometimes when she's really, really hungry and I'm breastfeeding her, she'll be yanking at my hair, and then I'm trying to get her to latch. Just a lot going on. And like that was the time I snapped on her. So because I am aware that like, oh, like I have the capacity to do this, Jared and I have like opened up communication to say like, sometimes I just really have to hand the baby to you.
Right.
And it's admitting that it's possible, not that we ever would, but saying that like, I don't even want to walk down that line. So if I know I'm getting really frustrated with the baby, then I know that I can come to my partner and be like, help. But you first have to make that admittance that like, I do need help in that way.
Absolutely.
For the record, I don't shake my baby. Not going to shake my baby. I just want to ensure that I never do, because it is bad, and we all know that.
That's why we talk about shaking babies, and that's why if you wouldn't shake a baby, you shouldn't cheat on your spouse without talking to your spouse about it first, so that they can intervene and help you from shaking the proverbial baby that is your marriage. There you go. There you go. So, but do you think that
it's not ask help before cheating? To clarify for somebody, it's not, Isa.
Okay.
You're asking for help the moment, or you're calling attention to the tendency that you have. You're saying, or you're asking your partner to be like, what are your thoughts on this? Or you're forcing them to normalize the discussion if you know that's an intrinsic
exactly
part of who you are.
Yeah.
So it's not like I'm about to cheat, help me. It's more like, I was on Instagram today and I had feelings towards this person, or like that waitress, like the way that she looked at me kind of made me feel a way. Like it's those little small moments, or watching a movie together and being like, oh, like this sex scene, here's what it makes me think about. Or if your partner does say something, rather than like reacting in a way that makes them want to edit themselves for your benefit, it's like trying to create a space so they can be truthful. That way you're always a trusted partner, and thus you can help to like, again, guide your partner through decisions that could end up ruining your relationship. So if you have to tell somebody right before you cheat, it means you probably haven't done the due diligence of being honest about all those little moments before that led up to that even being a possibility for you.
Right. And that's, yeah, because to your point, you wanted to show it as if like, I don't need to say anything because it's not nothing. Right? I don't need to say anything because I'm not a cheater. I'm not a person who would ever cheat. I'm not a person who would ever let it get too far. So I don't need to let my significant other know about any of this, because it's not like it's going to be life-changing. It's not like it's going to impact our relationship, because I would never let it get that far.
Yeah. I purposely do stuff, to be honest with you. Like I'll show Jared if I think someone's attractive. If we're watching Game of Thrones, I'll call it out and say like, oh, like Jon Snow's my type, like this person is my type. So I do try to normalize the discussions around like that part of my humanity in low risk ways, in hopes that makes it more comfortable for him to have those dialogues with me, and of course vice versa. So I feel like it's when you read the book and you read it from that vantage point, and you think about, oh man, like this guy majorly cheated on his wife, almost fell in love with somebody else, and that, not that it is anybody's fault, but again, if we always stick with the narrative of like cheaters are evil people and they are bad, like, do you know that they used to send cheaters to a whole, like in England, if you cheated, you were banished to like a small part of Australia. Like they have done everything. They have stoned you to death. They have exiled you. You have lost your job. You have gone to jail. You've lost your career, and people still do it. So we can continue to make cheaters be like this evil boogeyman, and then never explore what it is that we can do societally to uphold monogamy and make monogamy more plausible. Or we can continue just to keep saying like, stone them, they're terrible people. And if we have any more dialogue about it, we end up normalizing it. And that's the worst thing we can do.
Well, and the interesting about cheating, why are you?
I might take her
Why'd
on
you put the
vacation.
baby on the phone? Why's the baby on the phone?
I don't know where Jared went. He was having because I was on that call before, and so when I came upstairs, he was like, "Take the baby." So I think he was having a
I'm
shake a
going to
baby
shake
moment.
the baby.
So now I have no idea
This
where
is
he
it.
went.
I was gonna say, like, you know, it's interesting in terms of like the fact that they had this island that they would, or this section that they would send cheaters to. When cheating, the definition of cheating now seems to be so like different or broad, right? Like, so, you know, because we talk about things like emotion, like what is actually cheating? And I know that you kind of talked about, you know, early on in your relationship to say that, you know, what's acceptable to you versus what's not acceptable to you. So is cheating like just when you draw those boundaries at the beginning of a relationship, and if a person crosses that boundary, whether it be an emotional boundary, like, because I think you even said at one point, you know, I don't know, I'm calling out a conversation from like 7, 8 years ago, but you know, where you can have, you know, you can go on a date with another girl, you could have relations with another girl, but you can't take a picture with another girl and post it on your Instagram. Like, is that cheating, right?
Yes, I think exactly. I mean, cheating, it's a relationship is structuring rules around the game that you're playing together, right?
Right.
And the rules of
Yes.
Monopoly are different from the rules of Uno. And
Right.
everyone's house rules for Uno and Monopoly are different. So I think that it is important to clarify that and not make assumptions. And that's sort of, to me, the benefit of normalizing non-monogamy. And it's not because I don't believe in monogamy. It's because people need to know that there are other options, that there's not a
Right.
one size fits all that forces people into parameters that they just cannot live up to those expectations. So knowing that there's other options, other games for you to play, like, don't be an asshole and play that you know that you're not set up to be real in, and to play fair in. So I think that now that we're getting to a place where, one, it's becoming more nuanced because of social media, and two, there's just more choices for relationships. You can't just take for granted and say like, well, everyone knows what cheating is. They don't.
No, they don't. That's the thing, because I don't know, because, you know, like,
We
because
do know
again,
that
like
it's
this whole,
putting your bodily fluids together. I think across the board, maybe that's the one.
but I don't know, because, you know, are your rules different for that, right? Like,
Yes.
if you're okay with your partner having other relations, as long as like you know about it. Again, it's like, is it cheating if it's happening in plain sight? I don't
Yeah.
know. Like, that's the question, right? Is it still considered cheating if you're quote unquote following the rules, right? So that's what I wonder. Non-monopoly isn't an easy option though. I thought someone said non-monopoly.
Non-monopoly.
I was like,
No,
we'll start fights over monopoly.
non-monogamy is not easy, but nothing is easy. So monogamy is not
Monogamy is
easy
not
either,
easy.
as we've seen from
No.
the scandal that's happening right now. Again, you could be threatened with being stoned, you can be threatened with murder, with exile, and then people still can't uphold monogamy because it's hard. But that isn't to say that there's an easier option.
But it is interesting that you say that, because, you know, as long as you're going down the monogamy route, people are okay with it, knowing that it's highly likely to fail. Versus if you go a non-monogamy route, right? Then people are like, you're setting yourself up for failure. But how is the normal route doing anything different, right?
Mhm.
Let's see. What boundaries have you set with your partners? Those are some good questions. What are your guys' thoughts on like emotion, or like what are some of the boundaries that you do set with your partner? You know, like I don't know that I don't know if I can get into this because Chris is in the other side too, but it's like you know, as far as like Chris and I are concerned, he doesn't necessarily have like he doesn't really have the kind of characteristics, or like, for me, Chris's mistress is his work. That's where I set the boundaries. That's where I set the rules of engagement. That's where I kind of call out. So it's like, you know, other women aren't necessarily the place where I feel like I have to draw lines in our relationship. It's around his work that I feel like I have to draw those relationships. So I'll often call his career the mistress, or sometimes his phone is the mistress in our relationship, and we have to set boundaries around that, for sure.
Somebody said, is there such a thing as too many boundaries? And I think there absolutely is, because that's what jail is, right?
Yeah.
It's a space, or that's what a
Cage.
cage is. when there's just
That's what a cage
too
is.
many boundaries in place where somebody feels stifled. And then I think that actually incites somebody to want to break free. So
One of the comments that you've also made, Shan, is that you're like, and maybe you made this, so correct me if I'm wrong, you can't compete with the new.
yes,
Is that something you said? Can you explain that?
yeah. When you'll never get back. Chris was talking about the beginning of your relationship, right? And even in the course of love, they talk about how people romanticize the start of relationships because everything is just awesome. Everything, like if you want to know what it is like to be in a rom-com, like reflect back on like the first few days or first few, romantic connections. And so when I'm going to give a lewd example here, but the first time that Jared and I like engaged in sexual activities, popped his top in like 3 minutes. Now I'll be down there for 3 shifts, right? Because it's just when you're not new anymore, you're just not eliciting the same neurochemicals. It's just not as exciting. There's something very different about it. But also on the flip side, new can't compete with old. Yes, please. Where'd you go?
Oh, I got on the phone.
Oh, I think new can't compete with old either, because knowing somebody intimately, being able to be a companion afterwards, knowing what someone's likes and dislikes are, not having to re-explain boundaries, like there is a very unique space for both of them. And when you're in a monogamous relationship, it's like new can't compete with old and old can't compete with new, but new can definitely destroy what is old and what is stable. So that's where that decision just becomes a lot easier, because you value what it is that you have and share. But so just because something is new and can't compete doesn't mean that necessarily that it's like worth engaging in.
Right. Yeah. Well, that's good. All right. Well, I know we've been talking for a while now, and I know that there's a ton of questions coming in. I'm just going to go check the questions really quickly to see if there's anyone. Maybe I'll ask you one of these questions, Shan. What's your biggest sacrifice or compromise in marriage?
You know what's really great? I don't have an immediate response to that.
That's good.
I don't think it's because I haven't made them. I just feel like, one, I got married late in life. I got married at 33. So I knew a lot about myself, my current self, and the way that I wanted to live. And so it's not as if like I grew and Jared and I have not been together that long either. We've only been together for 4 or 5 years. So if you ask me this question probably in 3 more years, because I would have expanded and become something different, and chances are that wouldn't be exactly aligned with Jared. But the only reason that we are together and we decided to get married is because we aligned on lifestyles, on morals, on values, and on long-term goals. So it's still probably too new for me to answer that. But you've been married for 10 plus years, Lauren, so you have a stab.
I think I've sacrificed. At the beginning, I definitely sacrificed friendships. I think at the very beginning, I sacrificed friendships, and that is because I was a person who had a lot of male friendships, and that's not something that that Chris was comfortable with, especially at the beginning of our relationship. So that was something that was very difficult to overcome, and now we're continuously redefining the relationships, but I'm a person who has thrived around a male an energy with male an environment with male energy, and that's something that I've had to wean myself off of. So I've sacrificed friendships, and I think that some of the things that I originally felt like I sacrificed, especially around pursuing, I wouldn't even say I sacrificed them for Chris. I won't say that, but there were some initial goals that I had, especially around, my career and aspirations that I had, that even before Chris came along, I decided that I probably do need to sacrifice those things in the pursuit of having a more balanced lifestyle. But now, starting to just kind of reclaim that back, and really starting to, go back to some of the things that I set out to do in the beginning, trying to circle back to those things, because that's what made me feel most like myself. So finding those parts of myself that I was pushing to the side, not just because of Chris, but just because of in the pursuit of a balanced and very stable lifestyle. I had different ideals of what kind of wife, mother I needed to be in order to obtain that. So.
That was
I'll say that.
incredible, Lauren. That's incredible. I think that you and Chris could probably do a full talk just on that. I think that that's really fascinating to know where you guys are updated on, you know, in terms of that alignment. That was just I don't have any words for that.
Apparently not.
It's just really good.
How
old was Lauren when she got married? She was 27 years old.
Whoa, that was off the top for you.
I love you. That's
yes,
why.
I was 27 years old.
Say hi to Kevin.
I love everything about you. Hey, Kevin! What's going on? You want to come in the live too, Kevin? It's a family jam. All right, Shan. Well, thank you so much for being on here. It was amazing. We have to do this more often because you're just my favorite person to talk to.
You're mine too.
In the world. You're mine.
You know what? Actually, I was telling the story to someone recently about how much I love you. And I was like, to describe how much I love my sister, I said, when she told me that she was pregnant, I went to my car at work because I had a 9-to-5 job then. I excused myself, went to my car and just cried. And they were like, oh, because you were so happy? And I was like, no, because I had to like let go of the dream that me and Lauren would like end up together, lonely sisters, who just became spinsters and lived happily ever after. So
yeah.
And I still hold on to that dream.
I very much hold on to that dream, and I'm fighting to get it back. I'm fighting to get us back there.
To be continued.
Goodbye. Thank you. Goodbye, Shan. Thank you guys so much. Thank you all for joining this week's or this month's book club on the Course of Love. Yes, for everyone who's been asking, I am going to be saving this live. I am going to be making sure that it's accessible to everyone so that you can go back and rewatch it. You know, stay tuned because we're going to do this again next month. We're going to pick another book. We're going to have some really great conversations. Thank you so much to all the guests who have joined me. If anyone is interested in sticking around for part 2, there was a lot of requests to have Chris come back on the live. I know Chris has been requested to come back on the live as well. So I can run a quick 10-minute Q&A with Chris. I can bring him back for anyone who wants to stick around for what's coming up next. But for those of you who are departing, thank you so much for joining. Really appreciate the comments, the engagement, the hearts that have been going up, all of the encouragement that you guys have been posting through. Like, this has been such an exciting live. It's been such an exciting adventure. I love the growing audience. And you know, I've run out of words to say. That being said, I'm going to bring Christopher back into the live so we can ask him a few more questions if anyone wants, because I know that he may have had some comments about some of the things that I shared in the live too. And I see that we've got a bunch of questions as well. What's happening with the Michael Jackson snap?
Yeah.
What's the beginning of that song? No.
Which song? Which song?
No, the interlude in The Way You Make Me Feel, the Michael Jackson video, where there's just a snapping.
Okay.
That's what I imagined. That's what I heard.
Let's do it.
That's
Let's
what I heard.
By the way, one of our secrets, we dance together.
Yes, dance a lot. Dance a lot. All right.
All right, let's go.
Mr. Christopher, let's start by saying this. Let's see. One of the questions comes in from, when do men feel ready for marriage? Similar to like, what is a man's version of a biological clock?
Wow. I cannot for a moment represent myself as speaking for every man. That would be ridiculous. However,
you are the everyday man, though, aren't you?
Am I really though?
No, I'm sorry.
Am I really though? let my voice carry through. No, but to answer your question, oh man, wow, it's tough for guys, right? I was thinking about all of the conversation that we've just heard, and there's just so many good insights that have come forward, and then as guys, there's so much we don't talk about, either with other men or with, with the appropriate women who are able to guide us along the way. You have to understand, especially from a Black male perspective, it's difficult. Now I'm fortunate, raised by a single mom who was mother and father. When it came time to talk about sex, boom, there's your penthouse, there's your Playboy, go ahead, all that stuff. She tried her best. But when it comes to understanding when we need something and when we need a woman in our life and when we're ready to partner off and be that, I think the guidance I would give is take your time, learn about yourself, mature up, make sure that you can bring something to the table as opposed to just sort of trying to live live out your boy. If you don't get your boyhood dreams out of your way, if you don't get some of that immaturity out of your way as men, it'll come out during the marriage. It'll come out during the relationship. And that's sort of one of the benefits. I mean, you didn't get to live through the early years.
Yeah.
Right? You got to skip to the man who was ready to be all that he could be. And so I think, in terms of a biological clock, I don't have a specific number. Generally, we need to clear our 20s and feeling ourselves and all the hormones and the testosterone. There is some biology behind what happens with young men. When I say a young man in high school is ready to get married, I would probably say no. Right?
But yeah, I think for you though, Chris, and I just want to answer a question. I've seen it a couple times.
Sure.
What's yours and mine sign? Chris and I are both Leos.
Yeah.
If anyone's wondering.
Yeah, that's tough.
We're both Leos. It's not tough. It's easy. But I was just thinking the reason, because I think you had I think with your first marriage, you had a bit of a biological clock, because you kind of talk about your first marriage and the decision to marry as this I'm X years old, I'm at this place in my life, she's at this place in her life. You kind of refer to it as a might as well, right? So what was that so what was your biological clock that said, okay, well, sure, let's get married?
Yeah, the biological clock wasn't so biological, right? It was family pressure. What? You're an upstanding, professional, you're doing well. It's time for you to do this, right? Go get it.
Right.
Well, what if I'm not ready? I mean, what if the person that I haven't met the right person? So there was really no allowance for that, right? And so really, guys, we need to know ourselves. We need to know what we bring to the table. We need to be secure enough to also have our partner lead. Now, that's a concept that may take a little, because I think as guys, when we come into things, we bring our gusto, we bring the testosterone, we bring what we think women want. But it's only through sort of listening and allowing your partner to take some of the lead. I came into our relationship that way. I saw a question here. What age was that for me? Yeah, that's a tough one, because I don't think it happened until halfway through our relationship. I came in with, I had a lot of the maturity. I had the professionalism. I had my perfect concept, like Olivia was talking to. I had some of that conceptual framework about what I needed from a perfect wife, perfect relationship, perfect romance. And I cast all of that at you at once. And then, as the real started to creep in, the day-to-day, the pressures, doing different things, making ends meet, having a child, I then realized that, into my 30s, I needed to really, that's when I started to feel like, okay, we're in our skin here. I can be the mature man that you need. I can be the man that sort of steps back when he needs to, and that's the, it's that combination and being able to exist with your partner. If that's the kind of partner and relationship you want and have, if you want it to be constructive, mutually beneficial, you have to be able to, as men, navigate those circumstances. And I'm really sensitive to sort of, and I'm not saying this to be cliche, but I'm really sensitive to mistreatment of women. And it's something that, I can't even watch movies where women are being abused, right? Like, there's something for me when my mom and dad were together, and my dad tried to hit my mom, and because he was a drinker, and she would knock him out, right? And I saw that strong portrayal. And just to think, though, that he tried to raise his hand to her just puts me in a zone. So having that in my background leaves me a bit different, and really, on I take a moral high ground. There is no option for that. But in some relationships, we have to acknowledge that there are a number of abusive tendencies. And I know we're getting a bit off track here, but COVID-19 and the sort of restrictions that it's placed on many have sort of shone a light, and maybe not enough light, on what's happening to women behind the scenes. Now having to do both the home, having to hold down a job, take care of kids who may be sick, take care of elderly parents who may be sick, and then also endure abuse. Come on. Like, I just, as guys, what man thinks that he has the right? And I get very emotional and animated about this topic because it just is unconscionable to me. Unconscionable. And so understanding a bit about me, understanding my background, understanding that it is unconscionable for me to envision hitting a woman with my own hand. You have to, not everyone is like that. And so, even myself, sort of, I have to come to terms with that as we have these discussions. So there's a lot wrapped up in being mature enough to be married. You shouldn't think hitting a woman is a good thing. You shouldn't even think it's an acceptable thing. You shouldn't even think it's something that you do just once if she gets out of line. Non-starter.
Right. But again, like, similar to like the baby shaking conversation, right? Like we all know you don't shake a baby. We all know you don't cheat on a woman. We all know you're not supposed to hit a woman. So like sometimes how do you know how you're going to behave in a certain situation? But don't get me wrong, like I understand that there's people who have grown up with that who may just believe that it's acceptable and that's a non-starter. But how does that get exposed before it's too late?
Hey, listen, I hate to sort of, this is going to sound corny, right? Like, and maybe this is why you like me, but I guess, how is it that,
because you're corny?
Yeah, maybe, I don't know, because it's the mental toughness. When I had an old coach who used to say, most people fail because they quit too soon. Most people fail because they quit too soon. If you quit on your ideals, if you quit on your values, you fail because you quit too soon. You didn't fail because someone, people push you over the edge. People are going to push you. Are you going to hit and shoot every person that hurts you? Come on. You need, and there's societal problems as I start to branch out into other themes. We're seeing this every day, sort of a lack of moral fiber, a lack of toughness. And how hard is it to just choose not to be cruel? I'm active in the diversity, equity, and inclusion space within our global firm, and I continue to see those aggressions, those microaggressions against people of color, underrepresented minorities, lack of opportunities, lack of sort of advancement, and all of that are symptoms of the same problem, a humanity that we've sort of lost and we're losing, right? So anyway, I'm getting into my soapbox here. Let me just take a step back from work. Relationship, when are you ready? Guys, just ask questions of yourself. Ask yourself, are you really ready to commit to someone? Are you ready to share that life? Are you ready to have fun? Are you ready to go play games with that person? I think playing is one of the things that sort of stands out for me, because I've always loved to play. Play is a big part of things, having fun. Different strokes for different folks. Different people think different things are fun, but you still got to have fun and have that source of fun together. And if you know that you can have that source of fun together, when there are those stormy days, you can still laugh. And laughter and happiness is what your relationship should be. That will make you gravitate towards it as men and want to be there, as opposed to thinking you should be elsewhere.
I'll ask you this question too, Chris,
Sure.
before we end off here. So you've been listening to this entire live, and I think just grasping all these different themes and concepts about love and relationships. Is there anything that has kind of given you a different perspective, or made you think a little bit differently of maybe about certain ideals or values you had in the space of love and relationships?
I don't think there's anything that has sort of rocked me to my core. No. I definitely didn't know it all, but I'm trying to think if something is really. you know,
Because you've been
Olivia,
hearing a lot of female
yeah,
perspectives. So like
Olivia
as the
said something
male in the room.
interesting. Olivia said something
Yeah.
interesting early on, and I wasn't sure where she was going with that. And she said, you know, not one man, not a single relationship, if I interpreted her comments correctly, not a single relationship will satisfy everything for her.
Yeah.
And that was an interesting sort of opening to what could potentially be advocacy for a different, an alternative lifestyle with multiple partners. That's where I kind of thought that's where it was going. I didn't quite know where that was going. So,
But I guess that, kind of similar concept where it's, and this is where I kind of struggle with it because, you don't just have one friend, right? You have different friends for different things, but you have just one soulmate or one partner that's supposed to fulfill all of those things. Is that realistic? Is that a realistic, like you don't put that expectation on anybody or anything anywhere in life, but this one person has that responsibility of your end-to-end happiness. Is that reasonable?
I'm not sure, but if I look at how swinging goes for people, and I've met a few, it doesn't seem to work out so well. As realistic as it isn't, it doesn't seem to work out so well. Not to say that one person can satisfy everything, but when you start to mix, it depends on what it is you're trying to satisfy elsewhere. Is the individual bringing you the happiness that you're not getting in your current relationship? Well, that's a problem because that happiness can lead to more intimacy and can lead to love. And then here you go. Now you've got two full-fledged relationships. Right. So I think we need to unpack this question a little bit more. No one wants to be.
Should you have a second wife to watch football with?
Oh,
Gotcha.
Well played. Well played. No, I think you should nut up and watch the games with me. Oh, that's a great one. I love that. But yeah, I think give and take and compromise. That's where it comes in. So see you on Football Sunday.
I'm happy to watch the games with you. You just have to make it fun to watch it. You just have to. Like I said, I'm happy. Okay. Just make it fun. You don't make it fun. Oh, okay. That's my problem. Yeah, that's my problem. Right. Just make it fun for me.
Lauren needs to gamble to watch football. I'm like, wait a minute.
Because you don't know, because I can't watch a game. We're not invested in any team. Every game that we throw, we're not. We're about
to have a domestic. Let's move to the next question.
No, that was all the questions that I had.
Awesome. Thank you all. It's been awesome.
Thank you, Chris, for joining for the bonus round. Again, thank you all. Thank you all for sticking around for the bonus round. We learned a lot about Chris. Thank you, Chris, for opening up and your vulnerability and your honesty. Really appreciate it, and for sticking it out and hearing a bunch of female perspectives. Like, you sat through like an hour and 45 minutes of female perspectives. I don't know when's the last time you did that, right? And for any of the other guys on the live, have you to sit through and hear like an hour and 30 minutes of female perspectives? That's not something that you would normally gravitate to. So I just want to commend you for doing that. And it is,
women are people.
I acknowledge.
Why wouldn't I do that? Women are people. Okay. Why? I sit through everyone's perspectives. That's what it means to be a leader.
Okay. Well played, sir. Well played. You guys have an amazing evening. I will be posting this for everyone afterwards. This has been a very long live, but definitely well worth the time. Thank you so much for joining, and I hope to see you guys on the next book club. Have a good night, everyone. Have a good night, Chris. I'll see you later.
Oh, yeah, thanks. Yeah, where are you going?
I'll see you later. All right, bye.